Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started here. I know some people are still coming in, but we're going to try to stay on schedule. So welcome to those of you that are watching streaming on live. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining at this lunch here. So for those that don't know me, I'm Jeff Clark, thegoldadvisor.com. My dad was a gold prospector, and in this situation, it would be akin to my dad finding a seam that already had gold in it. That's what we have with Homeland Uranium here. So there's a historic resource of 35 million pounds of uranium, 17 million pounds of vanadium. Roger's going to go over all this. As many of you, I think, know, when Trump signed his executive orders, he named uranium specifically. He didn't name all the metals, but in his announcement, he did name uranium directly, and Homeland is in Colorado. It's in the U.S. It'll benefit directly from that. Permits are pending to drill 10,000 meters to upgrade that resource. They're on BLM land, which is easier to permit than the Forest Service. There are 3 uranium mills nearby. They just raised $16 million. I participated in that. So full disclosure, ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome to our lunch Roger Lemaitre, the CEO of Homeland Uranium.
Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. I know that you have a lot of choices today, particularly down the hall. We're pleased to be able to host you for lunch and tell you about our fledgling company, because today we turned 4 months old. So you haven't heard of us. It's not a shock. We are one of the newest uranium companies on the scene. However, even though we're young, we pack a little bit of a punch. We'll talk a little bit about our company as we go forward. Before we do that, we'll talk a little bit about the uranium industry and why uranium is a compelling investment for you. And maybe many of you already know many of these things, so if I torch you with that, I apologize ahead of time. We traded on the TSX Venture Exchange and the OTCQB. As of about 3 weeks ago, we were on the OTC. We also trade on the Frankfurt Exchange. And for a company 4 months old, we're trading about 400 to 500,000 shares a day, which is pretty spectacular for a company in our age. For those of you, word number one, who were here, any of you were here yesterday during the breakout session at all? Did you get word number 72? If you got 72, you get 50 more points on the treasure hunt on that disclaimer, so I'm sorry. If you don't have a number 72? No? Okay. You don't get the 50 points. 6 things about us that I want you to take away. We're a well-positioned resource-bearing uranium company. They're not every company you'll see in the U.S. has resources. That's really important. I've been in the uranium industry for about 25 years. I started at Cameco, looking for uranium deposits, making a couple of discoveries. Managed a Saskatchewan exploration program, Saskatchewan exploration manager, run on their M&A team all over the world in the last cycle, and then also managing their global portfolio of exploration projects. And I've never seen uranium, and particularly the nuclear industry, anywhere close to the kind of level of excitement that we're seeing today. Most of my career in this business, if we saw the events of what was happening over the Middle East, particularly in Iran over the last couple of weeks, uranium equities would have just dropped by 50%, with blink of an eye. Not even a blip on the screen this time around. So there's definitely a lot more acceptance of uranium and nuclear power this time around, whether you are looking at the geopolitical or security aspects, or whether you're looking at the clean air benefits. We have a significant historical resource. It's one of the largest potential uranium deposits in the United States. We're well financed coming off of our IPO. I think people still are quite surprised when we tell them how much we were able to raise, and tells you how excited people are about the space. And our board and management team, a lot of experience on the management team. Our board, we don't deserve a board of this strength, and I'll tell you about who they are. You usually see a company like this with a board that would have a $300 million market cap. And we're at an attractive valuation for those investors that want to get it even today. And everyone tells you that, but we'll try to convince you of that as we go forward. We have just a little over 101 million shares outstanding, fully diluted just under 138 million shares. Directors and officers and insiders have just over 18%, and the vendors that brought the project to us, which I'll explain, have 15%. Of that 15 and 1/3, so roughly almost 20% of those shares are in 3-year TSX escrow, so they're not able to get out in the public market very easily. Our market cap around 33 million today, Canadian 20, just a little under 24 today in US dollars. I think going back to the acceptance, whether you like the clean air benefits, the 2-degree target to try to hit, whether you are looking over here and saying, okay, 31 countries in the last couple of months or last year have joined the tripling of nuclear generation desire list. Whether you're here in the U.S. and believe that we're going to quadruple nuclear generation by 2050, and seeing, I don't think we've ever seen almost 70 reactors in construction in the United States, not even including the SMR angle. It's just truly amazing to see everybody's lining up, no matter which side of the spectrum you happen to be on. And then, of course, the most recent catalyst is everybody in the Magnificent Seven basically signing up to nuclear power. I find it truly amazing. I hope I don't offend any Microsoft people in the room here, but tying your brand to 3 Mile Island tells you an awful lot about the dire need for power, because that's a stretch for a lot of companies to do. But offtake agreements, basically securing long-term ability for nuclear generation to just be stable, which we have had a trouble seeing in some of the unregulated unregulated electricity markets in the United States, and that just creates stability and a long-term benefit. And then when we started this company, we were very keen to be focused in the United States. I've spent a lot of time in the Athabasca Basin in Canada. I mean, it's well known in the uranium space. And I get a lot of questions from investors, like, why did you come to the United States? Why didn't you do the Athabasca? And there's 2 key reasons. And the first reason is, one, even before we got this company up and running, before the new year, and things have really accelerated since then in terms of the positive stuff around, especially incentives around nuclear power and uranium in the United States. You could see the divide happening. Back in the Cold War era and shortly after, there used to be 2 prices for uranium. There was a CIS price and there was a Western world price. And we're kind of trending in that direction, whether it's going to be political or just economic. And we can see that happening, and with a very small amount of supply being originated here in the US, being highly dependent on questionable sources, there's a real need for uranium in the United States. And then, in late May, we saw the president come out and really put the hammer to the pedal, or pedal to the metal on uranium, nuclear power generation in the United States. And it will really help spur companies. While we're not directly going to see in the next year or 2 in our company the incredible benefits that are going to happen, because these are farther down the value chain, it's certainly helping us on the permitting front. And as we move forward, it will certainly help us as we get to that mining decision. The biggest thing about the uranium space, and then I want to go back to those of you who've lived through, and is there anyone here who went through the last uranium cycle as an investor? Ooh, okay. 1 over there, 2 over there. The last cycle went out of control in a short period of time because the Chinese came into the market as they started their new build program. There was essentially 1-2% growth in nuclear power. Some people would say 0 happening in that interval. We saw a crazy spike in the price, and it came down. But it was all that demand that was increasing was supplied by Kazakhstan, who in 2003 produced 5 million pounds a year, and then by the end of 2010 they were producing 55 million pounds a year. So an awful lot of demand got taken up in a market that was producing or needing about 160 million pounds. Well, now we're seeing all this desire to grow. We're seeing actual growth in this space. We don't even know what the SMR angle is going to be yet, and but over that whole period of time, almost no investment in new uranium capacity. And there's no Kazakhstan sitting in the wings to say, we need 50 million more pounds, let's bring it to the market. Well, that isn't going to happen. And I would say a shocking change in international views from the bureaucratic end. The IAEA, very, very, very utility focused, came out this year with their annual or biannual red book, and they've told everybody for years, we have more than enough uranium to deal with for the next 300 odd years. And no problem, it's all going to get out of the ground. And now this year, that's very bureaucratic, so you got to read a little bit between the lines. They say, we still have enough uranium, but we're going to need to invest significant amounts of money and of stuff that hasn't even been found yet. And that's a sea change. in their attitude. And so there's absolutely no chance that we're going to meet uranium demand. That we're trending closer to the high demand scenario than the low demand scenario. And I would say invest in every single uranium project that you can, because all of them are going to be needed to meet demand, period. The uranium spot price for investors, you usually only get to see the spot price, and especially in the last few months, watching incredible amounts of volatility. And you're going, spot is down, we're at the end of the market. Well, this is the history since, basically the post-2000 era, and we're seeing an awful lot of volatility, and I agree. But the biggest thing of all is you get to see spot price. We saw the market in the last 12 months, half that market was in backwardation. When that happens, and the term price is higher or lower than the spot price, 2/3 of your buyers leave the market in spot. So the spot price does the U-turn, absolutely. Your producers who buy pounds and flip them and use the arbitrage to flip them into term, they leave the market. There's no mid-carry trade contracts out there. They leave the market. And then in the new year, with the change of the administration, you have utilities that are going, who do I buy from today? Who can I buy from today? Who's going to get tariffed? Is the Russians going to be allowed to come back into the market? And so with that uncertainty, they don't know what to do, so they wait. And it takes and as they wait, they're coiling up the spring of demand, right? And the key part is every utility buys pretty much exclusively term pounds. So the term price is by far the most important. But it's understanding how your utilities procure uranium as the key to understanding how this market runs. So, you go start here. I make uranium, and I want it to sell it to, and it has to go through this value chain to conversion and enrichment, and then manufacturing to fuel pellet to get to the finish line. But utilities don't work that way. They work the other way down the chain. And they go, I'm going to buy if I don't have to do this whole process, I'll buy uranium rich product, or I'll buy enrichment, because if I have to buy uranium, I need enrichment, so I better buy the enrichment first. And they work their way down the chain. So when you look at what's out there, the forward-looking indicators in this space are UEP price, enrichment, UF6, and conversion in that order. Conversion price. Spot price has dropped. Conversion price is all-time high, hasn't dropped. Enrichment price, all-time high, never dropped. That tells you that utilities are not done with procurement. And it takes 3 years to go down this process. So they've just used up 1 year of their 3-year working inventory. They're coiling the spring. So to me, compelling time to be a uranium investor. Now we'll talk a little bit about Homeland. Homeland, northwestern Colorado, in the Colorado Plateau. Anyone who's a uranium investor has heard about all these projects in Utah and in southern Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona. Same rocks, northern end. This is a historical producing district. The Maybell mine was about 15 miles north of us, producing 5 million pounds in the late 70s and 80s, and a couple times in the 50s and 60s as well. We've tied up the key stratigraphy that hosts uranium in here. We had 2 world-class miners in here, Uranga Shell Shaft at Red Wash, Western Mining, probably the world's best explorer ever in the minds of anybody who's over the age of 45 in our business. The finders of Olympic Dam on the other side, and they found uranium at both projects, or both areas. Western Mining over here, Uranga Shell Shaft had all this land. We don't have the land in here where they found a coal-hosted deposit, which I'm not so keen on. That's a question for later. And these projects were both found at the time that 3 Mile Island happened, and the entire uranium industry in the U.S. collapsed. These projects were all BLM land. The land was allowed to lapse, and it sat idle for many years until and Bill Sheriff at Energy Metals picked it up in 2006, put it into his company, and rolled it into Uranium One. That was then sold to the Russians, and nothing was ever done with the property, and it was allowed to lapse again. And so when the vendors came to us and said, hey, we got this uranium project for you, and it's 35 million pounds, and based on my experience in the industry, I said, you're full of BS. And because I would have heard of this. But when they walked us through the process of how they rediscovered that this project existed, it made sense. When we bought the data set, it made sense. It actually did happen. And there's ways we can check on that, and I can walk someone through the process if you want, but that's painful to go through right today. Our flagship is Coyote Basin, 35 million pounds of historical resources, found by Western Mining in 1979 over a 4-mile stretch of rocks that are very shallowly dipping to the east. There are 4 known mineralized horizons in that package. They all dip, they're about 200-foot thick package. Each horizon ranges from 1 to 40 feet thick. Unfortunately, I'd like to say that we can take their existing data and turn it into a 43101 report, but we can't do that. We can't do the proper quality control. Information's not there. The rules are a little more erratically spaced than what a resource requirement would be today. But what it does is tells us where the uranium is, and I'll show you a slide of that in a second. But yes, in the same rocks that most all the uranium in Wyoming is found in, by the way, and just very underexplored. Western Mining defined these zones. Now, that 35 million pounds sits inside those little red, magenta, and orange polygons. That's bigger than the 35 million pound resource. We have to sort of search within it. That's all mineralized, but if you use the lower cutoff grade, that would change. What this does is it allows us, as an early stage, so-called early stage explorer, to make an easy roadmap and say, we just have to re-drill this. This is relatively low risk exploration compared to someone else. And going back to that question, why did you come to the US? Why didn't you go to the Athabasca Basin? Well, we could go to the Athabasca Basin, and for what we paid to get into this project, we could have brought to the market a 4th tier, pure grassroots exploration project with no mineralization on it for a 50% joint venture. There was real value in going here. But what this will do is allow us to get to an inferred resource by the end of the first quarter of next year. If that resource is proven up, we'll be able to move on to the next step and get an indicated resource in the next 12 months thereafter. So this is even a little updated. We just got our permit application in for the first phase of our drilling program a couple days ago. It was in our news release. Oh, sorry. Key part. What is really attractive about this project? Those little polygons, the 3 horizons, that's down to a depth of 250 feet. Very shallow, potentially open pittable. So in June, we started our first program, and the objective of that program was to show where Western Mining went out and found a hot rock sample that was uranium bearing. Could we find a hot rock sample? And that's what we were able to do. The horizons, were they actually located where we thought they were? We've been able to confirm that. So now we're ready to start that phase 2 drilling program. There's our guy out in the field there actually standing on the hot rocks taking samples. And doing more samples. We've actually been able to confirm that strike length extension that we thought was possible, north and south of the zones, those horizons still extend in the directions that we think they do. So we've got a question mark here. If we define this resource, we think it could be amenable to open pit mining. The projects are located between 3 conventional mills. It's a bit of a distance. It's about 200 to 250 miles to get there. I would like this company to maintain complete control over its production process. So we will try, and I won't promise it will work, but we will try heap leaching with an ion exchange recovery process. We will start the process to consider whether that's doable today, in the next during the drill program. We'll do the first step of 5 that will allow us to see, can we do heap leaching and ion exchange. Ion exchange is what's done at all the ISR operations in the United States and in Kazakhstan. Basically, uranium in solution gets stuck on, goes through resins, and they get stuck on the resins. And the reason why, you can transport that far more cost effectively than you can rock itself, because at a much smaller volume, much less weight. And if we can finish it ourselves, then we're actually looking at a potential, we have complete control of the process. Will the heap leaching work? Big question. Last time heap leaching was done, it has been done in Colorado at Maybell back in 1979, before everything collapsed. But that was at the infancy of heap leaching. In the last 50 years, we've learned an awful lot globally about heap leaching, and it is done all over the world in uranium today. So one of the challenges traditionally in Colorado Plateau deposits is there's a little bit of carbonate in there, and that creates acid, it drives up your acid consumption, which ups costs. So Paladin, back in the last cycle when he built Longer Heinrich, pioneered alkaline leach. Which one will work? I don't know. but we'll test it to see if it does. And if it does, we become, our objective is to get into the low-cost half of the curve. With an open pit, heap leach, and mineral iron exchange, we could be a significant player, especially at 35 million pounds, because it's one deposit. Now, the one competitive advantage we have over all our peers that you'll see in the US, because you're going, why are you different? One deposit versus 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 deposits. Which is easier to permit, which is more capital, which preserves capital. And having a 35 million pound deposit gives you the option to look at term options in the uranium selling price. It gives you the ability to scale that you can't do elsewise. It's much easier to build one mine that has a 10-year mine life or more than it is to build 5 mines that have a 2-year mine life. So that's our competitive advantage over our peers. Our Red Wash project, it covers the same stratigraphy. There's known showings around. This is upside for us, but we're not going to focus on that this year, so I'm just going to let it go. When you look at our peers, the left side of this slide is how many pounds do they have in the ground. I don't include some of the companies that are both active in Canada and the US, because it's hard to say how many of those, I want to talk about US operations. So the producers, they're big. We're right in the middle of those developer side, but like I said, one deposit versus 2 to 7. So it's significant. But on the left-hand side, or right-hand side of the screen, you're seeing the market cap per pound. We're a new company. We're 4 months old today. We're getting the story out. Our valuation hasn't yet rated with our peers. We do this work. We should see that valuation happen. And then it's up to you, the investor, to say which is the quality. Does that even make a bigger premium on that? Our team here has been there and done that. I've been all over the world in the uranium space for 25 years. Joel here, where are you, Joel? At the back, over there's our CFO. Nancy Nomar is a more relatively recent addition to our team, but she was involved at Dedison during the Phoenix discovery. She worked with Laramide Uranium. She worked for me at UEX as well. Experienced. Paul Matisik is well known in the spaces on our advisory board. And our board of directors, when we approached these guys about whether they want to join the board, I really expected them to say, you guys are too small, this isn't exciting enough for us, it's not big enough for us. Eugene McBurney, you look at his black and white picture, he is ancient, I won't lie, but he's been in the business forever and has done incredible things and is a legend, as is Mark Christian, his right-hand man. Andrew, you see here, he's at Meteoric, but he has extensive experience at ACAP in the last cycle. Rob Shuchuk has very, very skilled in the capital markets, and Ross McElroy, the recently departed, after the Paladin purchase of Fission Energy. So this board really knows anything to do with development, anything to do with capital markets and marketing. These guys are the tops. So just to go backwards here a little, or backward, just refresh. We're a uranium resource-bearing company focused in the United States. We have, of course, nuclear power, and where you think it's going to go in the next decade. It looks like it's only going in one direction, that's up. We have a large single deposit, open pit amenable, potentially heap leach amenable, lower cost project out there. We're well financed to do that work. Our current program is going to be $5 million. The money we have in the bank should take us through that first program, the preliminary heap leach testing, stage 1, step 1 of 5, and next year's program with our G&A, so we're well financed. We have an extremely strong board and management team, and even today at 33 cents, when you saw that bar chart, we're still an attractive investment for investors who come into the company today. And with that, I'm going to let you guys ask any questions you might have. Oh, and if you do want to get a hold of us, this is how you do it. Oh, okay. Okay, sure. So I got questions about permitting and how the time frame is. So 2 days ago, we submitted our NOI permit application for holes to the BLM and the DRMS in Colorado. Those processes take 6 to 10 weeks to get through. Hopefully, we'll see, but seems to be going faster. We'll have to follow that up with additional plan of operations permits, but those take a couple of months. Last year, a company in the neighborhood was able to get a plan of operation permits in 3.5 months. So 2 stages to do that drilling program that gets us to that inferred resource. We're not going to be the company, by the way, that just drills for the sake of drilling. You'll see some Athabasca companies that will get a nice high-grade hole and they'll drill more around it just so they can tell you. We're not expecting Athabasca grades here, so we're more worried about the engineering angle of things. So we'll drill holes. We're not going to see 10% samples like you see in the Athabasca Basin, but a whole lot of 0.2s to 0.5s would be wonderful. But each one of those won't change the universe from an investor point of view. It's the collective. So the question is, it will take a couple of programs to prove up the resource. We're anticipating it will take 2. The first one will get to an inferred stage. And then with that heap leaching first test, the board will be able to make a decision about whether this project has legs to go to the next stage, which would be an indicated level. And we're thinking that will happen in a 2-year window or a 1.5 years from today. You're either really bored or explaining that really well, or you're really hungry. Right at the back. I'd be very honest with you when I said nobody knew about it. Oh, sorry, repeat the question. So the question is, why didn't any of the other incumbents like Energy Fuels get into this project up front? It was unknown. It wasn't so all the data was privately held. So it's not like you can go out and see, where is that? The vendor who found this project actually went into Energy Metals September 2006 SEC filings and looked at the table of projects they had and resources they had and said, I don't know this one. Where was it? Let's go find it. And if you didn't do that research, you wouldn't necessarily know it was there. So I really can't explain it because I didn't believe it was real when it came to me for the first sort of poke at it, look at it. So it's probably because they don't know about it either. Or didn't anyway. Sorry, so there was a question over here. When we were just, the question was, why do we pick the name Homeland? So we were bantering about, a couple of names, and one of the people, it was one of the people in the shell company that we talked to, said, I have a name and I want to pick Homeland. And of course, it makes sense. We're going to stay U.S. focused, and it made sense to just pick a name that is synonymous with the United States.
Just wondering, with Athabasca, was it a Canadian regulatory environment that you have there?
Two things. And yes, the regulatory environment is a contributing factor, for sure. It takes the length of process it takes from success to the finish line. It just seems to be growing and growing and growing. And that's before the president made these changes to speed things up here in the U.S. And so that was definitely a case. I think it was more from what do investors get out of it, right? So literally, I had opportunities to pick up offers in the Athabasca Basin. I would consider them to be on Tier 4 level projects. So you usually hear about Tier 1, 2, and 3. These were kind of 4. And, every Tier 4 project in the Athabasca Basin has the potential to become the next gen. You could hit a Grand Slam home run with it. But to me, on a Tier 4 project out there where there's no existing mineralization, and you're paying more than what we paid for to get this project here, it's like being up against, it's an older crowd, so maybe you remember Nolan Ryan in his prime. He's throwing peas at you, you're blindfolded hitting it with a broomstick, and you could hit a home run, but it's high risk. This project, very low risk, because it's just sort of like, okay, you just got to do the work. We know where the deposit is. We just got to do the work. And to me, if you pay the same price for a Grand Slam home run, hit by lightning chance, this is just a better deal for investors, in my opinion, but I'm a little bit biased. Yes, sir. Yeah. So the question was, how many warrants do we have outstanding, or the 35 million warrants outstanding? They were part of the vast majority of those were part of the financing that we did. They're at 50 cents for a period of 24 months from March. So yes, Canadian, sorry. I do know there was a question that came from online to me directly, and it was about permitting in Colorado in terms of mine permits in Colorado. So I'll talk about the exploration permit that we know was issued, or there's been a few issued recently, but are there any mining permits in Colorado today? And I don't think there are any active going on today. I know there's a couple that are looking to be active. Energy Fuels, particularly at Whirlwind, is looking to go active as well. There, of course, have been permits in the past. So they're the state, and we have someone here who knows, this is unfamiliar territory. Let's put it that way. Well, as soon as all of you, the question was, when are we going to be on the New York Stock Exchange? And I love to say tomorrow. And if we could be on the exchange tomorrow, we would do everything we can to do so. The reason why we can is that our size, market cap, and share price isn't at the levels that would be required to get there. So we're going to have to do this work first. Certainly, and the gentleman sitting beside you can attest, he's going to hold as a major investor in our stock, he's going to hold my fingers down to get on the New York Stock Exchange as quickly as we can. But that's a valuation thing. So if you guys all go out tomorrow and buy 20 million shares at $3, we'll be on the New York Stock Exchange by the end of the year. Okay? Yeah. Okay, so the question was, are there a potential for more than 35 million pounds? And I'd say absolutely. Our focus is on the 35 million pounds, but I'll see if I can get back to there. We certainly know, and actually we're learning that from what we were doing today. Oops, went too far. These little squiggly lines, which are the horizons, we know for a fact that those go to the north and south end of the properties. The resource sits in those polygons. That's only a fraction of that whole part of the squiggly lines. So we already know there's potential north and south. In fact, there's some drilling up here. One of the highest grade holes drilled is actually that one over here, and it's not in the resource. So we think there's potential along strike in both directions. We know there's down dip extension as well, but we're really focused on the pit depth right now, because we think that being underground on a conventional mine in this particular type of grade and situation is probably going to push your costs way up, so we want to be in the pit shell. But we also know, one of the things that was, I don't want to get overly technical with you, that there's potential between the horizons. So when we're out in the field, we noticed that where the horizons outcrop, it was continuing to be radioactive down at depth. But back in the day, you've heard about these gamma probes, the scintillometers that work detecting radiation. Well, most people don't know they don't detect uranium directly. They detect one of the decay byproducts of uranium because it emits gamma radiation. Uranium doesn't. So Western Mining went through here with their gamma probes and their drill holes, and they went, here's a peak in the radiometrics. Let's go sample it, and they did. And more often than not, they found uranium, but some of them they didn't. And you go, that's kind of weird. In younger deposits that are less than 30-odd million years old, you don't often have enough time for the uranium to build up equilibrium with those daughter products. In this case, those Geiger counters detected bismuth, because bismuth detects gamma radiation. I don't talk about this forever, but the bottom line is, if they're not in equilibrium, you don't see it. We had 2 holes done, which was experimental at the time. Western Mining did 2 holes on a probe that actually detects uranium directly. And between those gamma spikes, we're seeing squiggly peaks on that direct uranium probe, called a PFN tool. Encore Energy has the rights to that as we speak. And so we think there's potential between the horizons, but we have not, the Western Mining didn't sample any of it. And until we drill the holes, we're not going to be able to confirm that. But it's sort of our third hope of expansion possibilities. Yes, sir.
Where's the water table and do you have access to water?
The water table here is anywhere between 170 to 470 feet deep, which is going to be likely below all of the mineralization. So if you're looking to say, do we want to do this as an in situ recovery mine? Extraordinarily unlikely, just for that reason. Water rights, we do not, for the current drill program, we will be bringing water in from town because we don't have water rights. The landowners to the east of us and the sort of east of those polygons, they almost all have water rights. So maybe there's a deal to be made as well with them. Yeah, so questions about is there any social license to operate people in the area that would have an issue? Certainly the town of Rangeley, which is about 20 miles away to the southwest, is a potential impact community, as is Meeker, which is 20 miles to the southeast. On our Red Wash project, the village of Dinosaur is right against the property. On Coyote Basin, there are no people, residents speak of within a sort of 20-mile-ish radius of the property. There are cattle ranchers that are in the east area. It's tough go, I'm not gonna lie, and there's a lot of oil and gas actually in here, all through here, all down in here. So they're very, very resource knowledgeable people. There's a lot of oil, and it's not huge oil. It's not the Alaskan shelf, but there is oil and gas. They're very resource willing. We wouldn't be looking at moving someone's house or someone's ranch building. They're much farther to the east of our property, and the best ranching is actually out in that direction. And strangely enough, some of the land to the east here, the private owner is looking to flip it to the BLM and they do a land exchange. So that tells you a lot about the quality of the ranching. Grass for ranching, excuse me. Sorry, this gentleman over here. Yep. Oh, it's gonna hurt costs. There's no doubt about that. That's expensive. So that's why the heap leach testing is very early in our process. A lot of companies would do the resource first, then look at the metallurgical work, and we're not going to have the answer at the end of the year. It's just the step first of many. And so, is it amenable? And which process? Is it alkaline leach? Is it sulfuric acid leach? Which oxidants do you use? We'll have a sense of where that is. But yes, I do believe it's very, very, very doable. Otherwise, we wouldn't even consider it. But yes, trucking 0.2% ore for 200 miles is very painful. It would probably be the biggest single cost. Don't know, and the reason why I don't know, but it would make the project more unviable. The answer is we don't know, because we don't know the exact shape of the deposits. We don't know the OPEX costs from the mining, CAPEX costs for mining. So, but it would put a strain on it, undoubtedly. Does it make it uneconomic? I don't know. However, the company wants to keep control of the process as long as they can, because even if it wasn't the case, you still have to toll mill it. And there's only one active toll mill. There's 2 mills that are permitted but not active that can process this in Wyoming or Utah. And it's hard to be subject to one mill's whims. Let's put it that way. And that's Energy Fuels' mill. And they do toll milling, but they also they're known to be a difficult negotiator. And it comes down to whether they have the capacity, and they certainly have the capacity to do it. Is the resource large enough to build your own mill? Maybe. I do think that the heap leach angle is a far better process. And technically, yes, you'd be building a back-end process like a mill, but it was not anywhere near as extensive. There's no grinding circuits and all that kind of stuff. It's less energy intensive. So yes, I don't know. And that is really one of those weird questions. We hear it on the Athabasca Basin all the time. Is it big enough to build a mill? Is it big enough to build a mill? And the answer is you don't know. I don't know. What I am more concerned about is this longevity and the ability to have a 10-year mine life, because then those things become possible or could be considered at least. But I don't think there's any reason to build a conventional mill. Any other questions? No questions about uranium markets. That's shocking. I mean, to be fair, Scott Melby over at UEC is the #1 expert in the world. So if you saw him, how many years before we can be a producer? Yeah. Sorry, pardon me. How many years? When I look at this process, I see you're probably, the fastest possible is probably 7 years. And that would have an alignment here, because we're going to be doing 2 years worth of drilling to get to an indicated stage. There's going to be engineering studies, and then there's going to be the permitting process, and that's when shovels could be in the ground. And that's how long is that process going to be? 2 years, 3 years, 14 days? I don't know. Yeah. You're on. Yeah. Oh yeah. I've run, after leaving Cameco and I was asked to leave, I ran a company called UEX Corporation for 9 years. Post-Fukushima, ran it through till next month will be 3 years ago that we sold UEX to Uranium Energy Corp. Under the time at UEX, we were a $75 million market cap company with 75 million pounds of resources in the ground, all in the Athabasca Basin. And when we got to the finish line, we were a $310 million company with 150 million pounds in the ground. And we had managed to scoop, on a couple of occasions, property and actually a Japanese company acquisition under the eyes of the major players, just because of the way we were able to move. And I will bring that sort of skill to this company as well. Yarrow? Oh, we will always look at other assets. I think what you'll see different than maybe other companies with what we do is I've told you that we want a 10-year mine life here, like a potential to be a 10-plus-year mine life producer. There's a lot of companies out there that'll just suck up pounds for the sake of owning pounds. We're going to be a company that says if we're going to bring you an acquisition, it's got to fit that criteria, that we can actually either kind of stand alone, be synergetic to what we're doing, or have a 10-year mine life. Because a 10-year mine life just opens doors for you in the space that nobody else can do otherwise. I don't want to be subject to a 10-year mine life helps you get through cycles. 10-year mine life helps you go to utilities and say, I want to do a long-term contract with you. You got a 2-year mine life, you're going to be playing that on the spot game, and you're subject to whatever the spot market does. At the back there. So, can you say that last bit again, please?
What differences are there between these companies that Wall Street has moved in on the line and yours? Is it the depth of your operation, the size, the number of projects that you're working?
I think when you're looking at Wall Street entering into the market, so the question is why are we front loaded because Wall Street's been pumping into the sector in the stock?
The question is not why did they buy you? I think you're a great opportunity. I think the space is in general, but what is the difference between Homeland and I think the company's called CEO?
Yeah. Okay, so what's the difference in why Wall Street's going into the Camecos and Denisons of the world and the energy fuels? Well, they're producers, right? So if you're a Wall Street company and you want to be leveraged to the price of uranium directly, and if you're in this room and you want to be leveraged to the price only, then those are the companies you should be looking at. Absolutely. Because like a gold company being leveraged to the gold price, that's what you're getting, right? If you want growth story opportunity, then you come into us. And Wall Street's not there yet. Yes, sir. I like my job. I'm afraid I can't speculate on that. The Western mining resource was just a resource. It didn't split it into categories. And that resource was done before the categories were implemented, if that makes sense. So it's very loose by today's standards. That thing I'm showing you on the screen there, I'm going to tell you right now, that's bigger than the resource because they use a lower cutoff grade. So does who use the same kind of categories? Yes. The question was, do uranium use the same resource categories as other commodities? And the answer is exactly yes. Especially if you're following 43101, you have no choice. You're following the same categories. I think at the end of the first quarter of this upcoming year, that will be a completely 100% indicated category. Okay, and then we'll work on moving to the inferred category. And you have to have inferred resources under 43101 before you're allowed to start doing engineering studies on pre-feasibility and feasibility studies. The rules are such that you can't do that otherwise. You can do, although that's going to change under the rules in the next year, a scoping study or what's called a preliminary economic assessment on inferred resources. Okay, but the board of the company will decide, are we in a spot where it makes sense to make that transition? Yes?
The current economic, political impact how quickly you're going to be able to activate it and move through the process?
Certainly, the question is, does the current political situation here help you think it will move the project along faster? Certainly that will be our hope, and we'll have to wait and see how that goes forward. I do believe that it will be better than it has been in the past. Whether it's going to be crazy acceleration, I don't believe that will be the case. But I do believe in my heart, if you were to compare it to the Athabasca Basin in Canada, it's going to be way faster. So the best uranium project in development in the world today is NextGen's Arrow project. I easily could say that, Athabasca Basin. And our government said they're going to fast track it, it's up for fast track under the new elected government. And they came out at the same time and said, yes, we'll have our Canadian nuclear safety meeting, public hearings in February. They mentioned this in March, 11 months. So I don't consider that fast tracking when the province is on side, the First Nations groups are on side, impact benefit agreements are signed, and all it is having this last meeting to allow shovels to start getting the ground. So I think that's not going to be the case here. But how fast it is, it's anyone's guess, because we're at the infancy of that process.
You don't have any issues with Indians or Eskimos or anybody else?
The UT tribe has a substantial holding on the Utah side of the border, which is 10 miles west of the west end of Redwash. In this area, there are nothing that we're aware of, nothing the BLM is aware of. All right, well, thank you very much, everyone, for your time. I hope you enjoyed.
We still have 2 minutes.
Do we?
Final questions before we have to break. So if you can hear me. Hey, since Roger's last name is French, we can say this is a sexy stock pick, right? So, okay.
If anyone has further questions, I'll be hanging around here for a while, and you can come see us over at booth number 38. Happy to answer any questions you might have about whether it's the uranium industry or whether it's about what we're doing. But we're early days, a lot of room for opportunity and growth in the company. So thank you for taking the time to hear our story today, and wish you the best luck in your investing in the rest of the conference.